The late afternoon sunlight stretched long shadows over the worn veranda of the aged farmstead. Jack Miller brushed perspiration from his forehead as he inspected the roof he'd just completed fixing. Ominous clouds loomed on the horizon, heralding the tempest that had been predicted for days. He'd succeeded in finishing just in time. Jack was a woodworker by profession, though lately accepted any job that came his way. At 38, with creases framing the edges of his eyes and hands toughened by years of toil, he bore the quiet pride of a man who had endured his tempests. 3 years earlier, his wife Lisa had succumbed to cancer, leaving him to nurture their son, Ethan, now 8 years old, alone. This particular task had arrived through word of mouth, as most of his projects did. A woman named Elena had phoned about a leak in her roof, her tone laced with concern about the nearing storm. The farmstead was on the fringes of Pinewood Creek, a quaint town where Jack and Ethan had relocated 6 months prior for a new beginning and cheaper living. "Thank you so much for coming on such short notice," Elena said, stepping onto the veranda. She was in her 40s, with long, dark hair tied back in a plain ponytail and kind eyes that wrinkled at the corners when she grinned. She wore denim and a simple emerald sweater, nothing suggesting she was anything but another resident of their humble town. "Glad to assist," Jack replied, stowing his tools in a tattered leather satchel. The shingles were in poorer condition than I anticipated, but I replaced the ruined parts. You should stay dry during the storm. Elena glanced at the roof, then at the darkening sky. I was getting anxious. This place has been in bad shape since I inherited it. I've been planning to restore it for ages. "It's a lovely house," Jack said, and hemmed it. Despite its neglect, the farmstead had sturdy foundations and charm that modern homes often lacked. Just needs some care. A breeze swept through the yard, carrying the freshet of impending rain. Jack's phone vibrated in his pocket, a message from Mrs. Harmon, their elderly neighbor who cared for Ethan after school. "Everything all right?" Elena asked, noticing his frown. "My son's sitter needs to leave early. I should head out before the storm arrives." Jack paused, then added, "I can return tomorrow to ensure everything's secure, if you'd like." Elena smiled. "I value that." As Jack collected his belongings, she asked, "You have a son?" "How old?" "Ethan. He's 8 sharp. As attack and twice as inquisitive." Pride warmed Jack's tired features. "You must proud," Elena said, her expression hinting she grasped the burden of parenting more than her words revealed. Jack nodded. "He's the best part of my life." He glanced at the menacing sky. "I really should go." "Of course. What do I owe you?" Elena reached for her wallet. Jack stated his price fare, but not low, and Elena paid him without hesitation. As he turned to depart, large raindrops began to fall, tapping against the freshly mended roof. "Looks like I finished just in time," he said. "Miss Xavier," Elena replied with a gentle chuckle, though her eyes held genuine gratitude. "Drive carefully." The storm hit with full force just as Jack reached his driveway. He and Ethan spent the evening listening to the rain pound their modest rental home, sharing a simple meal of spaghetti and playing board games by lamplight when the power briefly flickered. Later, after tucking Ethan into bed with an extra blanket against the storm skill, Jack sat at his small kitchen table reviewing his finances. Work had been consistent but not plentiful, and Ethan needed new shoes for the upcoming school year. He'd have to take on more jobs, perhaps seek weekend work. Morning brought clear skies and puddles reflecting the returning sun. After dropping Ethan at school, Jack drove back to Elena's farmstead to inspect his repair work. Ancient maple trees lining the long driveway dripped morning dew onto his truck's windshield as he arrived. He was surprised to see not just Elena's simple sedan, but also a sleek black luxury vehicle parked before the house. Elena stood on the veranda, conversing with a man in a costly suit one nodded before driving off. "Good morning," Elena called as Jack stepped from his truck. The roof held perfectly, not a single leak. Good to hear, Jack replied, nearing the veranda. Just wanted to be certain. Elena invited him inside for coffee, and Jack found himself agreeing. The farmstead's interior was partially furnished but tidy, with morning light pouring through windows needing a wash. They sat at a wooden table in the kitchen, mugs of steaming coffee between them. Have you lived in Pinewood Creek long? Ellen asked. Just 6 months. Moved here after. Jack hesitated. After my wife passed. Needed a change, somewhere more affordable. Elena nodded, empathy in her eyes. I'm sorry about your wife. Thank you, Jack said simply. He sipped his coffee, then shifted the topic. This house has great potential. Solid workmanship you don't find much anymore. That's what I thought too, Elena replied, dazing around the kitchen. My grandfather constructed it himself. I spent summers here as a girl. They discussed the house, its musturgent repairs. Jack offered suggestions, noting the original woodwork worth saving. As they spoke, he noticed subtle details about Elena, the quality of her watch, her attentive listening, the confidence in her posture. I should probably introduce myself properly, she said eventually. I'm Elena Winters. The name clicked instantly. Winters Development built half the state's commercial property. Winters Conservation Trust preserved thousands of acres of wilderness. Winters Foundation funded scholarships at the state university. Jack began, then stopped, unsure what to say. Elena smiled softly. Yes, that Winters family. Though I prefer to avoid formalities when I can. Jack felt a flush of embarrassment, realizing he'd been offering renovation tips to Simeon who could buy the entire town without blinking. I didn't mean to mislead you, Elena continued. I just enjoyed being treated like an ordinary person for once. Jack nodded slowly, absorbing this. So why'd interest in this old farmstead? You must own properties everywhere. This is where I feel most myself, Elena said simply. My grandfather taught me everything meaningful here, how to fish in the creek out back, how to recognize bird calls, how to drive a tractor. She smiled at Themeries. I've meant to restore it for years, but time slips away, doesn't it? Jack understood that deeply. He thought of plans he and Lisa had made, now tucked away like photos in an album he couldn't bear to open. The man here when I arrived? Jack asked. My property manager, Elena explained. I'm planning something for this place and Thaland around it, something significant. She shared her vision for the farmstead and its surrounding acres, a center for children who'd lost parents where they could spend summer shielding in nature, learning practical skills, finding community and shared experience, a place of growth and recovery. I've been searching for the right person to oversee the restoration, Elena said, watching Jack closely. Someone who values craftsmanship and understands the importance of rebuilding. Jack stared at her, the implication clear. I'm just a carpenter, he said. You're a father who's rebuilding his own life, Elena replied gently. And from what I saw yesterday, you're exactly the kind of person who understands shit these kids will need, someone who knows healing. Takes time and purpose. Outside the kitchen window, sunlight filtered through maple leaves, casting shifting patterns on the grass dot in the distance. Jack saw fields stretching toward woods, all part of the Winters estate, all potentially part of this project. It would be full-time work, good pay, flexible hours for Ethan's schedule, Elena continued. And there's a caretaker's cottage on the property included with the position. Jack's mind raced with possibilities. Steady work, a real home for Ethan, perhaps. Even a community that understood their struggles. Not charity, but opportunity. Purpose. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Say you'll consider it, Elena suggested, standing from the table. Come, I'll show you the cottage. It needs work too, but I suspect you're up to the challenge. as they walked across the dew-damp grass toward Asmalstone Cottage. Nestled among apple trees, Jack felt something rare hope stretching before him like morning light across the fields. The storm had passed, and though knew others would come, for the first time in years, he felt prepared to face them. Ethan would love those apple trees, he said, almost to himself. Elena smiled. I think he'd enjoy climbing them as much as I did. She touched his arm lightly. Some things shatter us, Jack, but with the right tools and enough care, almost anything can be built. Jack looked at the cottage, then back at the farmstead with its newly mended roof. Sometimes the most vital repairs weren't about shingles or beams, but a booth. Refuge we build for each other. Sometimes what needed mending most were the unseen places, the heart, the hope, the faith in tomorrow. I'd like to bring Ethan to see it, he said, if that's all right. Elena nodded, grasping few of his words. I think that will be perfect.